The chamber was enormous. Its walls were made of crystal that caught the light of 1,000 stars. The Galactic Council had built this place 50,000 years ago, and it had never seen war. Inside, representatives from 300 species sat in their assigned seats, arranged in circles that rose higher and higher toward the domed ceiling. Commander Hyunwoo Park stood near the back, his hands clasped behind his uniform. He was tall for a human, but small compared to most beings in this room. Next to him, Ambassador Ji-won Lee sat in Earth's designated chair. Her face was calm, but Hyunwoo could see the tension in her jaw. Today would change everything. High Arbiter Kelmoth floated in the center of the chamber. The ancient being was surrounded by a sphere of water that moved with him. His species had lived for thousands of years, and Kelmoth was one of the oldest. His voice echoed through translation devices that every species wore. "We gathered today to address the human question," Kelmoth announced. "Humanity has been a probationary member of this council for 50 years. In that time, they have shown disturbing tendencies." Hyunwoo felt his stomach tighten. This was it. Counselor Vexthar rose from his seat. The insectoid being clicked his mandibles together, a sound that the translators turned into words. Humanity is too aggressive. They expand too quickly. They ask too many questions. They refuse to accept the wisdom of species far older than themselves. Ambassador Ji-won stood. "We have followed every treaty. We have obeyed every law. We have not started a single conflict." "That is precisely the problem," Vexthar replied. "You obey, but you do not submit. You follow rules, but you question their purpose. Your military grows every year. Your colonies spread like a disease across space. We grow because we are young," Ji-won said. Her voice was steady and strong. "We explore because it is our nature. We prepare defenses because the galaxy has shown us we cannot rely on others for protection." Kelmoth raised one of his many appendages. "The Council has deliberated. Humanity represents a threat to the peace we have maintained for millennia. Therefore, we have reached a decision." The chamber fell silent. Hyunwoo could hear his own heartbeat. "Humanity will be quarantined to the Sol system," Kelmoth declared. "All human colonies beyond your home system must be abandoned within 1 standard year. All trade agreements are hereby terminated. All diplomatic relations are frozen. Humanity will remain in Sol until such time as you learn to be civilized." The chamber erupted in a mixture of sounds. Some species clicked in approval. Others remained silent. A few made sounds that the translators could not interpret. Ji-won's voice cut through the noise. "This is not justice. This is oppression. This is order," Vexthar replied. "We have given lesser species time to mature before. Most learn. Some do not. Those who do not learn remain where they cannot harm others." "We have harmed no one," Ji-won said. "Not yet," Kelmoth responded. "But we have seen your history. We have studied your species. You are violent. You are unpredictable. You are dangerous. The quarantine begins immediately. Council enforcement fleets will ensure compliance." Hyunwoo watched as Ji-won stood perfectly still. She looked around the chamber at all the alien faces. Some would not meet her eyes. Others stared with what might have been pity. Most looked at her with the same expression they might give to a misbehaving child. "You mistake restraint for weakness," Ji-won said quietly. The translation devices carried her words to every corner of the massive room. "For 50 years we have been patient. We have been respectful. We have shown you that humanity can work within your systems, but you have decided that our very existence is a threat." "It is for the good of the galaxy," Kelmoth said. "No," Ji-won replied. "It is for your convenience. You have ruled for so long that you have forgotten what it means to earn respect. You believe age grants wisdom, but it only grants arrogance. You look at us and see something you do not understand, so you seek to control it." Vexthar clicked his mandibles in what the translator called laughter. "You prove our point, human. You cannot accept the decision of your betters." "You are not our betters," Ji-won said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You are simply older. There is a difference." "The decision is final," Kelmoth announced. "Enforcement fleets have already been dispatched to your colonies. They will oversee the evacuation. Any resistance will be met with force. This council has spoken." Ji-won gathered her materials slowly. She looked up at the High Arbiter one last time. "Then this council has made a grave mistake. You believe we will simply accept this because every other species has accepted your judgments for thousands of years. You believe we are like them. You are not special, Vexthar said. No, G1 agreed. We are not special. But we are different. We come from a world that never knew peace. We evolved fighting each other, fighting our environment, fighting for every scrap of survival. We learned to cooperate not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And when we finally reached the stars, we thought we'd left that violence behind. She picked up her data pad and looked around the chamber one more time. You tried to teach us that strength means nothing in a civilized galaxy. You tried to teach us that age commands respect. You tried to teach us that the old ways are always the right ways. But today you have taught us something else entirely. And what is that? Kelmoth asked. That sometimes the old ways need to die. Ji-Wan walked toward the exit. Hyunwoo followed her, his boots echoing on the crystal floor. Behind them, the council began discussing the logistics of the quarantine. They spoke about timelines and enforcement protocols. They talked about which species would benefit from the human trade routes being open to others. Not one of them considered that humanity might refuse. As they reached their ship, Hyunwoo finally spoke. They really believe we will just accept this. Ji-Wan looked back at the massive crystal structure floating in space. They have ruled for 50,000 years. Every species they have encountered has eventually bowed to them. They cannot imagine an alternative. What happens now? Ji-Wan smiled, but there was no humor in it. Now we show them what happens when you corner an animal that knows how to fight. The ship pulled away from Praxis Prime. Inside, Ji-Wan sent a single encrypted message back to Earth. It contained only 2 words. They chose. The message from Praxis Prime reached Earth 3 hours after Ambassador Ji-Wan sent it. Within 6 hours, every human government on Earth knew what the Galactic Council had decided. Within 12 hours, the entire species knew they had been sentenced to imprisonment in their own star system. Admiral Tae-Yang Kim stood at the window of the War Council chamber in Geneva. The room was filled with military leaders, government officials, and scientists. Everyone spoke at once, their voices rising in anger and fear. Tae-Yang said nothing. He simply watched the Earth below and waited. Minister Yuna Kang slammed her hand on the table. The room fell silent. We have 1 year to evacuate 17 colonies, she said. 2 million people must abandon their homes. Farms that feed Earth will be lost. Mining operations that supply our industry will cease. And the Council expects us to simply obey. What choice do we have? Someone asked. Their fleets outnumber us 100 to 1. Tae-Yang turned from the window. He was an old man now, his hair gray and his face lined with scars from the resource wars that had nearly destroyed Earth a century ago. But his eyes were sharp and hard. We have the only choice that matters, he said quietly. We refuse! The room erupted again. People shouted that it was suicide. They argued that humanity could not win against the combined might of 300 species. They begged for a diplomatic solution. Yuna held up her hand for silence again. Admiral, explain. Tae-Yang walked to the holographic display in the center of the table. With a gesture, he brought up images of ships, weapons, and military installations that most people in the room had never seen before. For 30 years, I have been preparing for this day, he said. We joined the Council and we obeyed their rules. But we are not fools. We knew that peace could end. So we built a contingency. He zoomed in on a shipyard hidden in the asteroid belt of a system far from Earth. Dozens of warships floated in, various stages of construction. These ships do not use Council jump gate technology. They do not rely on Council fuel. They do not require Council navigation systems. Dr. Yunha Choi, would you explain? A woman in her 40s stepped forward. She looked tired but determined. We developed our own faster-than-light drives, Yunha said. They are not as efficient as Council gates, but they are independent. More importantly, we have designed weapons based on concepts the Council has never seen. They have had peace for so long that they have forgotten how to wage war. She brought up schematics of missiles, kinetic weapons, and defensive systems. The Council fights according to ancient rules of engagement. They announce their intentions. They minimize casualties. They target only military installations and avoid collateral damage. These rules make sense for a civilization that values all life, but they also make them predictable. You are saying we should fight dirty, someone said. I am saying we should fight to win, Yunha replied. The Council believes that showing strength is crude. They believe that overwhelming force is uncivilized. We will use their beliefs against them. Tae-Yang nodded. I have already sent orders to all colony worlds. Captain Jae-Sung Han at New Horizon is fortifying defenses as we speak. Every colony has been instructed to resist evacuation. The Council will send enforcement fleets, Yuna said. Yes, Tae-Yang agreed. And we will be ready. Far from Earth, on the colony world of New Horizon, Captain Jae-Sung Han stood on the walls of what had once been a farming settlement. Engineers worked around him, transforming irrigation systems into defensive barriers and converting agricultural equipment into improvised weapons. A young soldier approached him. Sir, the people are afraid. They are asking if we can really stand against the Council. Jae-Sung looked out at the fields that stretched to the horizon. His family had been among the first settlers here 20 years ago. His children had been born in those fields. He had no intention of leaving. Tell them this, Jae-Sung said. Our ancestors survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly destroyed our species. We crawled out of caves and reached for the stars. We did not come this far to kneel before beings who tell us we are too dangerous to be free. The soldier saluted and ran off to spread the word. Jae-Sung turned back to the work. If the Council wanted this colony, they would have to take it. On Earth, the vote was held in the United Assembly. Every nation sent representatives. The question was simple. Would humanity comply with the Council's quarantine? The vote was unanimous. Not a single voice spoke for surrender. Minister Yuna addressed the planet from Geneva. Her image appeared on every screen in every home and ship across human space. The Galactic Council has declared that humanity is too dangerous to be free, she said. They have given us 1 year to abandon our colonies and accept imprisonment in our home system. They believe we will obey because every other species has obeyed before us. They are wrong. She paused, letting her words sink in. We have tried to be good neighbors. We have followed their laws. We have respected their customs. But they have shown us that there is no amount of good behavior that will satisfy them. They fear what we might become, so they seek to cage us before we can prove them right or wrong. Yuna's voice grew harder. Humanity has never bowed to tyrants. We have fought kings and emperors. We have overthrown dictators and broken chains. We did not come to the stars to find new masters. The Council believes they are acting for the good of the galaxy, but they are acting only to preserve their own power. She looked directly into the camera. To the Council we say this: we will not comply. We will not abandon our homes. We will not surrender our freedom. If you want our colonies, you will have to take them by force. And if you try, you will learn why humanity survived when so many other species did not. The broadcast ended. Across human space, people prepared for war. Admiral Tae-Yang assembled his fleet commanders. They gathered in a secure facility deep beneath the surface of Mars. The faces on the screens represented humanity's best military minds, the Council enforcement. Fleet will arrive at New Horizon in 3 days, Tae-Yang said. They expect to oversee an evacuation. Instead, they will find a fight. Captain Jae-Sung has transformed the colony into a fortress. The Council ships will demand surrender. He will refuse. That is when the war begins. Can we win? Someone asked. Tae-Yang considered the question carefully. The Council has superior numbers and technology, but they have had peace for 50,000 years. They have forgotten what it means to fight an enemy who refuses to lose. We come from Earth. We have never known peace. Every human carries the memory of 10,000 wars in their blood. That is our advantage. He looked at each commander in turn. We will not win through strength. We will win through speed, cunning, and the willingness to do what the Council cannot imagine. We will strike where they are weak. We will vanish before they can respond. We will make them afraid. What if we lose? Another commander asked. Then we lose as free beings, Tae-Yang replied. But we will not lose, because they have given us no choice but to win. The meeting ended. Orders were transmitted across human space. Ships that had been disguised as cargo haulers revealed weapon systems. Stations that appeared to be research facilities activated military protocols. Humanity's hidden strength emerged from the shadows. On New Horizon, Jae-Sung stood with his people and waited for the Council fleet. They came 3 days later exactly as predicted. 6 massive ships appeared in orbit, each one larger than anything humanity had built. A transmission came through. This is Enforcement Fleet 7. You have been ordered to evacuate this world. Comply immediately. Jae-Sung sent his response. This is Captain Jae-Sung Han, commander of New Horizon Colony. We were born here. We will die here if necessary. But we will not leave. There was a long silence. Then the Council Fleet Commander spoke again. "You cannot resist. Stand down." Jae-sung smiled grimly. "Come and make us." The Council ships moved into bombardment position. That was when they learned their first lesson about fighting humans. The colony's defenses opened fire. The Council ships had shields designed to withstand asteroid impacts and solar radiation. They were built to last for centuries without maintenance. They were monuments to engineering that had been perfected over thousands of years, but they were not built to withstand weapons specifically designed to kill them. Captain Jae-sung watched from his command center as the first volley of missiles streaked up from hidden silos across New Horizon. The Council commander must have thought them primitive, crude compared to energy weapons used by civilized species. He would learn better. The missiles did not explode on contact with the shields. Instead, they punched through using kinetic force, moving so fast that the shields had no time to disperse the energy. 3 missiles struck the lead Council ship. Its hull ruptured in a chain of explosions that tore through 5 decks before the crew could react. The Council fleet scattered, breaking formation in confusion. Jae-sung allowed himself a small smile. The Council had protocols for engagement. They expected announcements and warnings. They expected time to respond. Humans had learned different lessons from their history. "Fire again," Jae-sung ordered calmly. More missiles launched, but this time the colony's railguns opened fire as well. Solid projectiles moving at a fraction of light speed crossed the distance in seconds. 2 more Council ships took damage. One lost its main engines and began drifting. The other retreated behind the planet. The Council fleet commander finally found his voice. "This is a violation of all engagement protocols. You are targeting military vessels without proper declaration of hostile intent." Jae-sung leaned forward to his microphone. "You came to take our homes. That was all the declaration we needed." The Council ships regrouped and prepared to return fire, but by then reinforcements had arrived. Not Council reinforcements, human reinforcements. Fleet Commander Bo Song emerged from faster-than-light travel with 15 warships. They were smaller than the Council vessels, but they moved with a speed and coordination that the Council had never seen. Bora had studied every available record of Council tactics. She knew they valued their ships more than victory. They would retreat rather than accept heavy losses. "All ships attack pattern Delta," Bora commanded. Weapons free. Her fleet split into 3 groups and attacked from different angles. The Council ships tried to coordinate their defense, but human ships moved too quickly. They struck, vanished behind the planet's moon, then emerged somewhere else. It was like fighting smoke. Within an hour, 3 Council ships were crippled and the other 3 had retreated. The Battle of New Horizon was over. Humanity had won its first engagement. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than Council sensors could contain it. For 50,000 years, the Council had been invincible. Now a species barely 50 years into space travel had defeated a Council enforcement fleet. On Earth, Admiral Taeyang received the reports and allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. But only a moment. This was just the beginning. "Send orders to all fleet commanders," he said. "We are not waiting for them to come to us. It is time to take the fight to them." Lieutenant Dae-hyun. Oh sat in the cockpit of his fighter craft and tried not to think about how insane this mission was. His squadron of 20 small ships was about to attack a Council supply convoy protected by 2 cruisers. On paper, it was suicide. But Dae-hyun had learned that Council tactics did not account for fighters. The Council built big ships meant to fight other big ships. They had defense grids designed to stop missiles and energy weapons. But a single pilot fighter moving at maximum speed? Their systems barely tracked something so small. "All wings, this is Dae-hyun. Stay tight and follow my lead. Remember, they cannot shoot what they cannot catch." His squadron accelerated toward the convoy. The Council cruisers detected them and opened fire, but their weapons were designed for larger targets. The massive energy blasts moved too slowly to track the fighters. Dae-hyun weaved between them like he was flying through rain. His fighter reached the first transport ship. He fired a single torpedo at point-blank range into its engines and peeled away before the explosion could catch him. Behind him, the rest of his squadron hit the other transports. Within minutes, the entire convoy was crippled or destroyed. The Council cruisers tried to pursue, but the fighters were already gone, vanishing into faster-than-light travel before the cruisers could get a target lock. Dae-hyun allowed himself a laugh. "Command, this is Echo Wing. Mission accomplished, no losses. Heading home." He could hear the smile in the controller's voice. Confirmed, Echo Wing. Good hunting. Across human space, similar raids were happening constantly. Fleet Commander Bora had divided her forces into dozens of small groups. They struck Council supply lines, communications relays, and isolated outposts. They never stayed to fight a prolonged battle. They hit hard and vanished, leaving chaos in their wake. The Council tried to respond, but their military had grown comfortable. They had fleets designed to show power, not to fight a guerrilla war. Every time they assembled a force to attack a human colony, they found their supply lines cut and their reinforcements ambushed. Ambassador Jiwan watched the war unfold from Earth and knew that military victories were not enough. The galaxy needed to understand why humanity was fighting. She established a communications network that broadcast across every frequency the Council could not block. People of the galaxy, her message began. You have been told that humanity is dangerous. You have been told that we are violent and aggressive. You have been told that the Council is protecting you from us. But ask yourselves this. Who gave the Council the right to decide who is dangerous? She played recordings of Council meetings where they discussed humanity with contempt. She showed messages where Council members referred to younger species as children who needed guidance. She revealed that the quarantine was not about protection, but about control. For 50,000 years, the Council has maintained peace, Jiwan continued. But it is the peace of a prison yard, where everyone obeys because they are afraid to resist. They call it wisdom. We call it oppression, and we will not accept it. The broadcast reached thousands of worlds. Some species dismissed them as propaganda, but others, species that had been guided by the Council for generations, began to ask questions. If the Council could quarantine humanity without cause, could they do the same to anyone? The Council realized too late that they were losing control of the narrative. Councillor Vexthar demanded that the core fleet be deployed. The core fleet had not been used in 10,000 years. It represented the Council's ultimate power, 200 warships crewed by their most elite forces. High Arbiter Kelmoth was hesitant. Deploying the core fleet against a single species? It seems excessive. This is not about one species anymore, Vexthar replied. Other species are questioning our authority. We must show strength or risk everything we have built. The core fleet was dispatched to human space. Its mission was to crush humanity's military and force immediate compliance. The Council believed that humanity's early victories were luck. They believed that overwhelming force would end the war quickly. They were wrong. Admiral Te Yang received intelligence about the core fleet's movements days before it arrived. He had been preparing for this moment. Every human fleet, every ship, every weapon was pulled back to a single location. The Outer Rim, a region of space at the edge of human territory. The Council expected to find human colonies. Instead, they found the entire human military waiting for them. The Battle of the Outer Rim lasted 3 days. The Council had superior numbers and firepower, but Admiral Te Yang had superior tactics and the willingness to accept losses that the Council would never consider. Human ships formed into swarms that overwhelmed Council defenses. They used the debris from destroyed ships as cover. They fired on their own disabled vessels to create explosions that damaged nearby Council ships. They fought with a brutality that the civilized galaxy had not seen in millennia. When the battle ended, 60 Council ships had been destroyed or crippled. Humanity had lost 40 ships. By any standard military analysis, it was a disaster for both sides. But the Council had lost. Their core fleet, undefeated for 10,000 years, had been broken by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The news reached Praxis Prime like a thunderbolt. In the Council chamber, species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices. They demanded explanations. They questioned the wisdom of the quarantine. Some even suggested that humanity had been right to resist. Vexthar stood before them, his mandibles clicking in agitation. This is temporary. We will rebuild. You will what? A counselor from a small species interrupted. Send more ships to die? Risk the security of the entire galaxy because you cannot admit you made a mistake. The Council chamber descended into chaos. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council was divided. On Earth, Admiral Te Yang addressed his forces. We have bloodied them. We have shown them that we will not break. But this is not over. The Council will regroup. They will try again. So we will not wait. We will carry this war to their worlds. We will show them that peace imposed by force is no peace at all. The war entered a new phase. Humanity was no longer defending. They were attacking. President Haiwan Shin had not wanted this war. She had spent her entire political career working toward peaceful integration with the galactic community, but the Council had given her no choice, and now she stood before the cameras to address not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. 3 months ago, the Galactic Council declared that humanity must be imprisoned in our home system. She began. Her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute conviction. They claimed it was for the good of the galaxy. They claimed we were too dangerous to be free. We proved them right. She paused, letting the words sink in across 1,000 worlds. We are dangerous, but not in the way they believed. We are dangerous to tyrants who dress their oppression in the language of peace. We are dangerous to ancient powers who believe age grants them the right to rule. We are dangerous to anyone who thinks that might makes right. Heywan leaned forward slightly. The Council wanted to avoid war. They wanted us to simply accept their judgment. But in trying to avoid a small conflict, they have created a war that is now spreading across the galaxy. And it will not end until the Council learns what we tried to teach them peacefully. All species deserve freedom. The broadcast ended. Within hours, human fleets appeared in Council space for the first time. Not near colonies. Not near outposts. Near Council homeworlds. Dr. Yunha Choi stood in the research facility buried deep in Earth's moon and reviewed the final calculations for Project Prometheus. The weapons she had developed were terrible, efficient, and utterly devastating. They represented everything humanity had learned from centuries of warfare, condensed into tools designed for a single purpose: to make the Council surrender. The kinetic impactors are ready, she reported to Admiral Taeyang. They will reach 90% of light speed before impact. Nothing the Council has can stop them once they are launched. Casualties? Taeyang asked. Depends on the target. If we hit military installations, minimal. If we hit cities, Yunha trailed off. We target only military and government infrastructure, Taeyang said firmly. We are not them. We do not wage war on civilians, Yunha nodded. She had expected nothing less, but she needed to hear him say it. The weapons she had built could destroy worlds. It was important that they only destroyed the parts of worlds that needed destroying. Captain Sungmin Bei stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable and studied the tactical display. His ship was one of only 5 dreadnoughts humanity had built. It was massive by human standards, though still smaller than a Council heavy cruiser. What made it special was not its size but its purpose. It had been designed for one mission: to break through the Council's defenses around Praxis Prime. All systems ready, Captain, his first officer reported. Sungmin nodded. Around his ship, 50 other human vessels waited in formation. More were joining every hour as fleets from across human space converged on this location. The target was clear. The mission was simple: take Praxis Prime and force the Council to surrender. Send the message, Sungmin ordered. The transmission went out on all frequencies. It was addressed to High Arbiter Kelmuth. This is Captain Sungmin Bei of the Earth vessel Indomitable. You have 1 hour to withdraw your quarantine. Grant humanity full sovereignty and equal status in galactic affairs, or we will take Praxis Prime by force. This is not a negotiation. This is a statement of fact. 1 hour. On Praxis Prime, the Council convened an emergency session. The crystal chamber that had stood for 50,000 years was filled with fear, for the first time in recorded memory. They would not dare, Vexthar insisted. Praxis Prime has never been attacked. The defenses are impregnable. They are bluffing. High Arbiter Kelmuth was not so sure. He had studied the reports from every engagement with humanity. They did not bluff. They did not posture. When they said they would do something, they did it. How many ships do they have in position? Kelmuth asked. 57, a military advisor reported. Our defense fleet numbers 200. Additionally, we have orbital defense platforms, shield generators, and automated weapons systems. By any analysis, they cannot breach our defenses. That is what we said about the core fleet, another counselor pointed out. The core fleet was engaged in open space, Vexthar argued. Here we have every advantage. Distance, defensive position, superior numbers. If they attack, they will be destroyed. Kelmuth floated in silence for a long moment. Finally he spoke. Send a response. Tell them we will consider their demands. Request a ceasefire while we deliberate. The hour passed. The Council's response arrived 3 minutes before the deadline. It was filled with diplomatic language about the need for dialogue and the importance of avoiding further bloodshed. But nowhere did it agree to humanity's demands. Sungmin read the message and felt no surprise. They think we are still negotiating. They think we will back down. All ships attack formation. Begin the assault. The human fleet accelerated toward Praxis Prime. The Council defense fleet moved to intercept. The battle began as expected, with Council ships using their superior numbers to create overlapping fields of fire. But the human fleet did not behave as expected. Half the human ships broke away and began attacking the orbital defense platforms. They flew directly into the most heavily defended zones, taking damage but destroying targets with ruthless efficiency. The Council fleet tried to respond, but they had to choose between protecting the platforms and engaging the main human force. While they were distracted, Sungmin led the Indomitable and 10 other ships straight toward the planet. The Council's defense grid opened fire with everything it had. 3 human ships were destroyed immediately. 2 more took critical damage and had to pull back. But the Indomitable kept coming. Its shields flared as they absorbed hit after hit. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Systems failed and were rerouted. The ship shook with each impact. But Sungmin kept his course steady. All power to forward shields, he ordered. Engineering, I need everything the reactors can give me. The ship accelerated even faster. It was a battering ram made of metal and fury, and nothing was going to stop it. The Council's defensive sphere was considered impossible to breach. Every simulation, every wargame, every analysis had concluded that it could not be done. But those simulations had not accounted for a ship whose captain was willing to sacrifice everything to prove them wrong. The Indomitable smashed through the outer defensive line. Its shields collapsed, hull plating vaporized. Entire sections of the ship were opened to vacuum. But it kept going, and behind it the rest of the human fleet poured through the gap it had created. Sungmin pulled his ship up and began firing on the orbital platforms from below. With the defensive sphere breached, the platforms could no longer support each other. They fell one by one. Above the planet, Lieutenant Dae-hun led his fighter squadron against the last of the Council's command ships. His fighters swarmed around the massive vessel like insects, too small and too fast for its weapons to track. They targeted engines, communications arrays, and weapon systems. Within minutes, the ship was crippled and drifting. The Council defense fleet realized they had lost. Some ships retreated, others surrendered. A few fought on until they were destroyed, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Fleet Commander Bora's voice came over the command channel. All ships cease fire. The Council fleet is surrendering. Captain Sungmin, you have control of Praxis Prime. Sungmin looked at his tactical display. His beautiful ship was barely functional. Half his crew was dead, but they had done the impossible. They had taken Praxis Prime. Send a message to the High Arbiter, Sungmin said quietly. Tell him it is time to talk. In the Council chamber, Kelmoth watched through the crystal walls as human ships took up position around the planet. For 50,000 years, this chamber had been a symbol of Council power. Now it was a prison. Vexthar was screaming that they should fight to the last, that they should call in fleets from every corner of the galaxy, that they should show these upstart humans what real power looked like. But Kelmoth knew the truth. They had already shown humanity their power, and humanity had broken it. A transmission came through from the surface. Ambassador Jiwan Li stood outside the Council chamber requesting entry. Let her in, Kelmoth said tiredly. Jiwan walked into the chamber that had sentenced her species to imprisonment. She was alone, dressed in her diplomatic robes, carrying no weapons. She walked to the center where Kelmoth floated and looked up at him. It is over, she said simply. You have lost. You have destroyed the peace of 50,000 years, Kelmoth replied. No, Jiwan said. You destroyed it the moment you decided that your peace was more important than our freedom. You destroyed it when you confused order with justice. You destroyed it when you forgot that true peace cannot be imposed. It must be chosen. She looked around at the assembled council members. You called us dangerous. You were right, but you were dangerous first. You built a system where age and power decided everything, where younger species were treated as children to be managed, where dissent was called disorder. That is not peace. That is tyranny with good intentions. Vexthar clicked his mandibles in fury. You have doomed us all. Without the Council, the galaxy will descend into chaos. Perhaps, Jiwan agreed. Or perhaps the galaxy will learn to govern itself without masters. Either way, the old order is done. She handed Kelmoth a data pad. These are our terms. The council is dissolved. A new coalition will be formed, based on equality and mutual respect. Every species gets an equal voice. No one species can impose its will on another, and humanity receives full sovereignty and all rights accorded to free beings. Kelmoth read the terms slowly. And if we refuse? G1's expression did not change. Then we will destroy every council facility in the galaxy. We will blockade every council world. We will ensure that the species that tried to cage us spends the rest of its existence caged itself. But I do not think you will refuse. Because unlike you, I believe you can learn. The chamber was silent for a long time. The crystal chamber had been repaired after the battle. The walls that had been cracked by shockwaves were restored. The systems that had failed were rebuilt. But something fundamental had changed. The building was the same, but its meaning was different. It was no longer a symbol of eternal power. It was a reminder that nothing lasts forever. Ambassador Ji-Wan Lee stood in the ruins of what had been the High Arbiter's platform. Kelmoth floated beside her, looking older somehow. The war had aged him in ways that thousands of years of peace never had. I do not understand your species, Kelmoth said quietly. You fight with such fury, destroy so completely, and yet you offer mercy when you win. We tried to cage you. We killed your people. We would have destroyed your worlds if we could have, and still you offer us a place in your new order. Ji-Wan looked out at the assembled representatives from hundreds of species. They had come to witness the signing of the Praxis Accords, the document that would reshape galactic civilization. Because we remember what it is like to be oppressed, Ji-Wan replied. Earth's history is filled with empires that fell, with tyrants that were overthrown, with systems that collapsed under their own weight. We learned that revenge only creates new cycles of violence. You were wrong to try to cage us, but destroying you completely would make us no better than you were. She turned to face him. You told us we were dangerous because we were violent. You were half right. We are dangerous because we understand violence. We know what it costs and what it accomplishes. But we also understand something you forgot during your long peace. Violence is a tool, not a solution. We used it to break your cage. Now we put it aside to build something better. Kelmoth made a sound that the translators interpreted as sadness. The council maintained peace for 50,000 years. You maintained control, Ji-Wan corrected gently. There is a difference. Peace that exists because people are afraid to fight is not peace. It is just the absence of war. Real peace requires trust, respect, and the freedom to choose. Admiral Taeyang Kim entered the chamber. His uniform was clean and formal, but anyone could see he was exhausted. The war had cost humanity 40,000 ships and 200,000 lives. Humanity had won, but the victory had been paid for in blood. He approached Ji-Wan and saluted. The last council military fleet has stood down. All human forces are withdrawing to defensive positions around our colonies. The ceasefire is holding. Casualties? Ji-Wan asked, fewer than expected. Most council species surrendered once Praxis Prime fell. A few fought to the end. The species that aligned themselves with Councillor Vexthar refused to accept the outcome. Vexthar? Dead. His flagship was destroyed in the final battle. He refused to surrender. Taeyang paused. He died believing he was right. Ji-Wan felt a wave of sorrow. So much death, so much destruction. All because the council could not imagine that they might be wrong. She wondered how many other Vexthars were out there. Species that would rather die than change. What happens now? Kelmoth asked. Taeyang answered. Now we ensure this never happens again. The Praxis Accords establish a new coalition based on equality. Every species, regardless of age or power, has an equal voice. Disputes are resolved through arbitration, not force. And most importantly, no single species or group can impose their will on others. It will not work, Kelmoth said. Younger species do not have the wisdom to govern themselves. They will make mistakes. Yes, Ji-Wan agreed. They will. But they will be their mistakes to make. That is what freedom means. The ceremony began. One by one, representatives from 300 species approached the platform to sign the accords. Some signed eagerly, having chafed under council rule for generations. Others signed reluctantly, still believing the old ways were better. A few refused to sign and left, choosing isolation over participation in the new order. Captain Jae-Sung Han represented the colony worlds. He had become a symbol of human resistance. the man who had stood against the council when surrender seemed inevitable. He signed his name with a steady hand, thinking of the people who had died defending their homes. Fleet Commander Bora Song signed on behalf of the military. Her rapid strike forces had crippled the council's ability to wage war. She had proven that speed and cunning could defeat overwhelming power. But she took no joy in the victory. Too many of her people had died. Lieutenant Daehyono signed for the Fighter Corps. The young pilot who had become a legend during the war looked uncomfortable with the attention. He just wanted to go home and see his family. Dr. Yoonha Choi signed for the scientific community. Her weapons had broken the council's fleets, but she hoped they would never be used again. She had already begun designing new technologies for peace, ways to share knowledge and resources across species. Minister Yuna Kang signed for Earth's government. She had guided humanity through the darkest days of the war, making decisions that had cost lives but saved humanity's freedom. The weight of those decisions showed in her eyes. Finally, it was Kelmoth's turn. The ancient being floated to the platform and extended one of his appendages to make his mark on the document. It took him a long time. Signing the accords meant admitting that the council had been wrong. It meant accepting that 50,000 years of civilization had been built on a flawed foundation, but he signed, because the alternative was to die clinging to a system that no longer worked. When the ceremony ended, Jiwon made her way to a small observation deck. President Haewon Shin stood there looking out at the stars. "How do you feel?" Haewon asked. "Tired," Jiwon admitted, "and worried. We broke the old system, but can we build something better?" "I do not know," Haewon replied honestly. "But I know this, we had to try." The council's peace was dying. It had been dying for thousands of years. They just refused to see it. All we did was speed up the inevitable. "Do you think the coalition will work?" Haewon considered the question carefully. "Not perfectly. There will be conflicts. Species will disagree. Some will try to dominate others. But at least now there is a framework that assumes all species are equal. That is worth fighting for," Jiwon nodded. She looked out at Praxis Prime below, the world that had been the heart of galactic power for longer than humanity had existed. It looked peaceful from up here. Beautiful even. No sign of the battle that had raged around it. No indication that the galaxy had changed forever. 20 years passed. The galaxy had changed in ways both expected and unexpected. The coalition had grown to include nearly 500 species, including dozens that had never been part of the council. Conflicts still arose, but they were resolved through negotiation rather than decree. Captain Sola Park, daughter of the man who had witnessed the council's condemnation of humanity, walked through the coalition headquarters on Praxis Prime. She was young, only 25, but she had been chosen to represent humanity on the coalition council. It was a position of honor and responsibility. She passed through the memorial that had been built to honor those who died in the war. Human names stood alongside council names. In death, they were all equal. Sola entered the council chamber for her first official meeting. The room was full of species she had only seen in history files. Some looked at her with respect, others with suspicion, a few with what might have been fear. She took her seat and looked around. Humanity had won its freedom, but the work was not done. It would never be done. Freedom required constant vigilance, constant effort, constant willingness to defend it. The meeting began. The first issue was a territorial dispute between two species. The second was a trade disagreement. The third was a request from a young species that wanted to join the coalition. Sola listened carefully to each presentation. When it was time to vote, she cast her ballot based on what she believed was right, not what was easy or popular. That, her father had taught her, was what freedom truly meant. The meeting ended after several hours. As she left, an old being approached her. She recognized him from the historical records. Kelmoth, the High Arbiter who had condemned humanity and later signed the Accords. "You are Hyunwoo's daughter," Kelmoth said. It was not a question. "I am," Sola replied. "I wanted to tell you something," Kelmoth continued. "Your father was present when we made the greatest mistake in council history. He watched as we sentenced your species to imprisonment. Do you know what I remember most about that day?" "What?" His face. He showed no anger, no fear, just as calculation. He was already planning how to defeat us. I should have seen it then, but I was too arrogant to believe that any species could challenge us. Kelmoth paused, as if gathering his thoughts. I have lived for thousands of years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall, but I learned more from humanity in 5 years of war than I learned in 50,000 years of peace. You taught us that age does not grant wisdom, experience does not guarantee understanding, and power does not equal right. Sola did not know what to say. This being had tried to destroy her species. But he had also learned. He had changed. That, she supposed, was what the coalition was really about. The possibility of change. "Thank you for telling me," she said finally. Kelmoth drifted away, leaving Sola alone in the corridor. She looked up at the crystal ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its journey through the cosmos. Its people were free to explore, to grow, to make their own choices. They had fought for that freedom. They had paid for it in blood. But they had also shown mercy when they won. They had built something new rather than just destroying the old. Sola thought about her father, about Ambassador Jiwan, about Admiral Tae Yang and all the others who had fought in the war. They had given her generation a chance to live in a galaxy where all species were equal, where freedom was not granted by ancient powers but claimed and defended by those who valued it. She made a silent promise to herself and to those who came before. She would not waste their sacrifice. She would work to make the coalition everything it could be. She would defend freedom, seek justice, and remember always the lessons that humanity had taught the galaxy. That strength without wisdom was tyranny. That peace without freedom was prison. That age without humility was arrogance. And that any species, no matter how old or powerful, could learn to change if they were willing to try. Sola walked out of the building and looked up at the stars. They seemed brighter somehow. Not because anything had changed in the cosmos, but because the galaxy was no longer living under the shadow of the Council's ancient power. The stars had always been there. But now, for the first time in 50,000 years, they shone on a truly free galaxy. And humanity, the species that had been called too dangerous to be free, had made that possible, not through conquest but through the willingness to fight for something bigger than themselves. Earth's rage had shaken the stars. But it was humanity's mercy that had healed them.